In Celtic's history, there's been some dramatic conclusions to the league season. 10 men winning the league in 1979, the intervention of Albert Kidd in 1986, and a victory to remember Tommy Burns in 2008 are just some of the standout moments. However, only once have the boys been involved in an official one-off game to decide the title's destination. In May 1905, Celtic went to Hampden to face Rangers. At stake was not a trophy such as the Scottish Cup. Instead, victory meant the winners of this playoff would be league champions. Season 1904-05 proved to be a memorable and successful one for the boys. Back in August 1904, in the words of one newspaper, they began their intercourse for the season and went on to claim 2 cups, winning the Glasgow Cup and Charity Cup. Celtic also performed well in the league, although were often behind Rangers. With 2 games to play, the boys went to Ibrox for a must-win fixture, or their title hopes were gone. A stirring performance meant the green and white hooped men gained a 4-1 victory, following it up with a 6-2 win over Motherwell. This ensured that Celtic would finish the league season on 41 points. However, unfortunately, this was also the case for Rangers. In those days, the only thing that could separate teams was a points difference. Actions such as goal difference or goal average were not yet considered. Instead, in these circumstances, a special one-off game was held to decide the destination of the league flag. 1905 was not the first time such a game had taken place, although it is the only occasion that there's been a definitive result. In the first season of the Scottish League, back in 1890-91, Rangers and Dumbarton each topped the table with 29 points. A playoff game was held which ended in a draw, and so the title was instead shared between them. So to settle the question of who would be 1905 champions, a playoff was to be arranged between Celtic and Rangers. However, before this would take place, the 2 sides met in the Scottish Cup. To say the least, it was a controversial day. On the 25th of March 1905, Rangers came to Celtic Park for a semi-final. Celtic dominated the opening 20 minutes, but an injury to defender Donald MacLeod meant the Celts were down to 10 men, in the days before substitutes were allowed. Although it was still even at half-time, in the second half, Rangers made their numerical advantage count, scoring in the 65th and 80th minutes. It seemed there was no way back for Celtic, and this was definitely the case when forward Jimmy Quinn was sent off, putting his team down to 9 men. At this point, chaos began amongst the spectators. Some Celtic fans were outraged at the referee and rushed onto the pitch, eventually attacking the match official. The police managed to get him to safety, whilst the Rangers players took refuge too. Order was finally restored and an attempt made to restart the game. However, once more, many fans spilled onto the pitch, making it impossible to finish the cup tie. At this point, the decision was taken to abandon the match. Despite 8 minutes remaining in the game, the decision taken by the Scottish FA was to award the win to Rangers, given that they had been leading at the time the game stopped, and also because it was deemed as Celtic's fault that their fans had invaded the pitch. Furthermore, Celtic specifically did not seek a replay. The Hoops noted that there had only been around 100 to 150 fans on the pitch, out of a crowd of 35,000, and that most were simply young boys playing around, rather than engaging in serious violence. However, the club also said they wanted to send a message to fans about the consequences of pitch invasions. After the match, Jimmy Quinn faced problems of his own, connected to his ordering off. Despite the Rangers defender Alec Craig writing a letter to the SFA saying that Quinn had not deliberately kicked him, the Celt was still banned for a month. Quinn also ended up going to court. The Glasgow Evening News had claimed that he had savagely kicked Alec Craig, and so the Celtic forward sued them and was eventually awarded damage for this false report. In April, the Ibrox side went on to meet Third Lanark in the Scottish Cup final, with the Warriors ultimately claiming victory after a replay. This was the last time that the Kafkin Park men won the Scottish Cup. When the 6th of May 1905 came around, it was time for Celtic to face Rangers in the league playoff match. In order to ensure a fair encounter, different steps were taken. For one thing, it was to be played at the neutral venue of Hampden Park. In addition, an outside referee was brought in for the match. Given concerns about the impartiality of Scottish officials, an English referee had been chosen for the occasion. Fred Kirkham refereed English and international games, and also had a year-long spell as manager of Tottenham Hotspur. 30,000 fans turned up at Hampden for the match, which kicked off at 3:30 p.m. It was a dry day, although also very cold, and there was a noticeable wind too. After winning the coin toss, Rangers chose to play into this breeze in the first half. The opening 45 minutes of the game were relatively even. There were various attacks from both teams. Rangers came closest to scoring through Robert McCall. He was better known as R.S. McCall and gave his name to the famous chain of newsagents. At the other end, Jimmy McMenemy went close for the hoops. It was 0-0 at the interval, and Rangers now had the backing of the wind. However, it didn't help give them any obvious advantage. Instead, almost halfway through the second period, it was the Celts that first had cause to celebrate. In the words of one newspaper, the boys moved with more unison forward, and 20 minutes after the restart, they took the lead. A soft shot from Jimmy McMenemy crept past Tom Sinclair in the Rangers' goal. Sinclair would later have a Celtic connection. The Ibrox side loaned him to Celtic at the start of the 1906-07 season, and he went on to set a league shutout record for the boys. As the Celtic fans cheered and the Rangers players tried to regroup, there was almost immediately another goal to celebrate. Straight from kick-off, Celtic went back up towards the Rangers' goal. They won a corner, and after this was taken, a shot from David Hamilton sneaked into the goal, doubling the Celts' advantage. This may have seemed to settle the game, but Rangers had other ideas. Within 5 minutes, the Ibrox team's John Robertson had halved the deficit. It was expected to be game on for the final quarter. Instead, it became rather scrappy, with Celtic being warned by the referee for time wasting. Rangers' job became even harder when they went down to 10 men owing to injury, and they struggled to create any outright chances. By the time the 90th minute had arrived, no further goals were scored. The final whistle ensured that the Celts were the league champions, for the first time in the 20th century. After the playoff match, the Daily Record's headline read, "Celtic win the rubber," referring to the boys' victory following a tie on points. This created another Old Firm draw, as both teams had now won the title on 5 occasions. But this wasn't a stalemate that would remain for long. The 1905 league win had a momentous outcome for Celtic. It started them on the road of setting a then world record and also Scottish record that stood for decades, until the Hoops themselves surpassed it. Following their 1905 success, Celtic retained the championship flag in 1906, 1907, 1908, 1909 and 1910. This 6-in-a-row run was then a world record and acknowledged by the Scottish League with the presentation of a special shield. Interestingly, during this run, Celtic's main rivals weren't Rangers. Twice the league runners-up were Dundee, twice Falkirk, and Rangers and Hearts also finished second, once each. 6 in a row remained the Scottish record until 1972, when Celtic sealed their 7th successive title in what became the famous 9-in-a-row run. In the 21st century, Celtic did 9 in a row for a second time, from 2012 to 2020. Since 1905, arguably the closest that Celtic have come to repeating a playoff-type fixture was in 1979. At the end of Billy McNeil's first season in charge at Parkhead, the boys faced Rangers in the Hoops' final league game of the season. Victory was needed to ensure the title returned to Celtic Park. Despite falling behind and going down to 10 men after Johnny Doyle was sent off, the Celts fought their way to a famous 4-2 victory, ensuring they couldn't be caught in the league race. As exciting and memorable as this was actually just a normal league game, albeit one which settled the title's destination. In reality, had Celtic lost this match, Rangers would still have had to win their 2 remaining games to claim the title. The 1905 playoff, however, was a very different affair. On that day, both teams entered the pitch knowing that victory would mean they would see the league championship flag hoisted above their home ground. It was a huge incentive, and one which most inspired the Celtic players. Nowadays, teams that are tied on points at the end of a long season can be separated based on issues such as goal difference, goals scored, and head-to-head results. Technically, if all of these still lead to a tie, a playoff could be used, but that's not something that's happened since Celtic's 1905 triumph. It's another small piece of Celtic history, being the only side to become Scottish champions after winning a playoff game, which is maybe just as well. Can you imagine the police and media hysteria which would arise if such a game had to take place in the 21st century? If you want to learn more about Celtic history, follow Hail Hail History on Twitter X or Blue Sky. You can also take part in free Celtic walking tours. Visit celticwalkingtours.wordpress.com for more information.